She didn't think, she just moved. A 3-year-old boy had wandered into the rain-slicked street as 5 black sedans rounded the corner. The nanny threw herself in front of the lead car, arms spread, a human shield in a gray uniform. The motorcade screeched to a halt. The rear door opened. The most feared man in the city stepped out, saw her face and froze. He knew her. And in that moment, her secret past collided with the child she was sworn to protect. Her name was Amara Oak, a graduate of the legendary elite Nanny Academy. Her charge was Leo, the only son of Enzo Vidal, the reclusive head of the city's most powerful crime family. For 6 months, her world was bottles, bedtimes, and ballet recitals, a carefully constructed normalcy. But in that single moment of recognition on the rainy street, that normalcy shattered. Because the question wasn't just who she was to him. The real question was what she had done before she ever picked up a pacifier. The elite Nanny Academy doesn't advertise. Its campus is unmarked, its curriculum classified, and its graduates are placed only through encrypted referrals. For Amara Oak, it was a sanctuary. A former foster child from Lagos, she was recruited not for her connections but for her aptitude tests, top percentile in situational awareness, crisis psychology, and defensive driving. She learned to detect 17 different poisons by smell, to disarm an attacker while holding an infant, and to map the exit routes of any building in under 60 seconds. But the first lesson, drilled into every student, was the only one that mattered. The charge is everything. Your life is currency to be spent for theirs. Her placement with the Vidal family was considered the Academy's most delicate ongoing assignment. Enzo Vidal wasn't just a businessman with a shadowy reputation. He was the architect of a corporate empire built on silent acquisitions and intimidating market share. His wife, Sophia, had died in a car accident when Leo was just 6 months old. The official ruling was tragic weather and a slick road. The underworld whispers suggested a message had been sent and received. Since that day, Enzo retreated. The family compound, a fortified estate on the outskirts of the city, became a bunker. Leo's world shrank to its walls. Amara arrived on a crisp autumn morning. The gate was 10 feet of reinforced steel. The security detail scanned her retinas before the car even stopped. The head of security, a man named Kaito with a voice like gravel, laid down the law. You are never alone with the child outside the inner wing. You do not use your personal phone on premises. You do not ask questions about Mr. Vidal's business or visitors. Your purpose is to ensure the boy's safety, his development, and his routine. Deviation is not permitted. Then she met Leo. He was 3 with solemn brown eyes and a grip that trusted instantly. For the first month, the routine was armor. 7 a.m. breakfast, 9 a.m. lessons in the sunlit schoolroom, noon lunch in the kitchen under the watchful eye of the family chef, an old man named Gio who'd been with Enzo's father, 2 p.m. outdoor time in the walled garden where 2 guards stood at opposite corners scanning the rooftops. The silence was the heaviest thing. No laughter echoed in the halls. No music played. The house was a museum of loss. Amara's first disruption was small. She found a picture book of animals in the library. That night, instead of a silent bedtime, she did the voices. A grumpy bear, a squeaky mouse. Leo's laugh, a sudden sparkling sound, seemed to startle the very air in the room. The guard outside the door shifted his weight. The next day, she brought crayons to the schoolroom. Leo drew a chaotic, joyful scribble of green and blue. It's the garden, he said, and the sky above the wall. She placed it on the refrigerator in the kitchen. Gio, the chef, saw it, said nothing, but didn't take it down. A week later, a small vase with a single dandelion appeared beside it. The first rehook came during Leo's 4th birthday party. It wasn't a party. It was a strategic meeting disguised as one. Men in expensive suits arrived, their handshakes with Enzo firm, their eyes never leaving the boy. Leo sat stiffly in a new suit, clutching a toy car. Amara stood in the corner, the protocol. One of the men, Uncle Marco, leaned down to Leo. Getting big, kid. Soon you'll come see the warehouses, learn the real family business. Enzo's voice cut across the room, cold. He learns what I decide he learns. The room chilled. That night, Leo had a nightmare. He didn't cry for his father, he whispered for Amara. She requested ballet lessons. It was denied. Too public, Kaido said. A risk, she argued. Not in a studio, here in the ballroom, just the music. She found an old record player and a vinyl of Tchaikovsky. Every Tuesday afternoon, the vast, empty ballroom transformed. Leo would run and spin, his steps clumsy, his joy absolute. Amara would watch from the side, her professional mask softening. Enzo Vital observed once from the second-floor balcony, hidden in shadow. He watched for 10 minutes. He did not interrupt. The bond was the work, but the work was also a shield. Amara documented everything in her secure academy log: meals, moods, developmental milestones, security anomalies. One anomaly repeated. Every other Thursday, a black sedan arrived, not part of the usual motorcade. A man in a tailored overcoat would visit Enzo in his study. 30 minutes later, he would leave. The guards never checked his ID. His face was never captured clearly on camera. Amara noted the pattern, the license plate prefix. She filed it away. Then the first test. A morning in the garden. A drone, small and commercial, buzzed over the wall. It hovered, a silent black eye. Leo pointed, curious. Amara's body moved before her mind processed. She swept Leo into her arms, covered his head, and was through the garden door before the first guard shouted. Inside, the security room erupted. The drone was neutralized. It carried no explosives, just a camera, a message. We see you. We see him. That evening, Enzo summoned her to his study. It was the first time they'd been truly alone. The room was lined with books he probably never read. He stood at the window, back to her. Your reaction time was 0.3 seconds faster than Kaido's, the academy training. Yes, he turned. His eyes were not the eyes of a public monster. They were tired. He is all I have left, I know, she said. He looked at her then, really looked, as if seeing the person behind the protocol. You make him laugh. Do not stop. A fragile trust was born in that moment. But trust in this world is a currency more volatile than cash. It attracted attention. The Uncle Marco began visiting more often. He would bring loud, inappropriate toys, toy guns, remote-controlled cars that sounded like engines. He'd ruffle Leo's hair too hard. My big nephew, he'd boom, future of the family. His eyes would slide to Amara, assessing, disapproving. You're coddling him. He needs to be hard. Amara would meet his gaze, silent. Her mandate came from Enzo, not from him. The tension was a wire pulled taut. The turning point started with a fever. Leo spiked a temperature of 103. The family doctor was away. Protocol demanded they use the backup, a physician vetted by the security team. Amara checked the logs. The backup doctor's last visit coincided with one of the mysterious Thursday sedan appointments. A coincidence, perhaps, but in her world, coincidence was the first warning sign. She insisted on taking Leo to the city's premier children's hospital. Kaido refused, too exposed. Uncle Marco agreed with Kaido. Enzo was away on business, unreachable. Amara stood in the foyer, Leo burning in her arms. The academy's first lesson echoed. The charge is everything. She looked at Kaido, at Marco. I am his primary caregiver. My professional judgment is that this requires a pediatric ER. If you prevent me, I will file an incident report with the academy that will trigger a full review of Vital family compliance. The heir left the room. The academy's review was a black mark, no client wanted. Marco's face darkened, but Kaido, after a long moment, nodded. A motorcade was scrambled. 5 cars. Amara and Leo in the middle one. They took a route through the quieter financial district. Leo was asleep, his head on her shoulder. The rain started, a sudden downpour that blurred the windows. That's when she saw him wander. A toddler, no more than 2, in a little blue coat, escaping his distracted mother's grip and stumbling into the intersection. The light was green for their convoy. Her driver never saw it. He was watching for threats, not for miracles. Amara didn't think. She passed the sleeping Leo to the stunned bodyguard next to her, threw open her door and moved. The squeal of brakes, the smell of burnt rubber, the shock of cold rain. And then the rear door of the lead car opening, Enzo Vital stepping out. His face, always composed in granite, shattered into pure, unguarded recognition. He wasn't looking at the child in the street. He was looking at her. Because the man in the tailored overcoat from the Thursday meetings, the man whose face was never on camera, was now standing beside the sedan, an umbrella held over Enzo, and he was staring at Amara with an identical shock of recognition. He was her former handler from the academy, the man who had pulled her from Lagos, the man she knew as Mr. Evans. And he had never, ever been meant to see her here. Time didn't freeze. It accelerated. The toddler's mother scooped him up, sobbing. The motorcade doors slammed shut. Amara was pulled back into her own car, not by her bodyguard, but by Kaito, whose grip was steel. His eyes held no anger, only a cold, operational clarity. Protocol had been breached in the most catastrophic way. Her cover, her identity, her entire purpose, now hung on the silent exchange between two men in the rain. The drive back to the compound was a silent, high-speed tomb. Leo, awake and confused, clung to Amara, but even he sensed the shift. The guards didn't look at her, they looked through her. She had become a variable. Inside the main foyer, Kaito spoke without looking at her. The boy goes to his quarters. You come with me. She was not taken to the family wing. She was led to Enzo Vital's private study, a room she'd only entered once before. Enzo stood by the fireplace, his back to the door. Mr. Evans, her handler, her ghost, stood by the window, his posture rigid. The door closed behind her, leaving the three of them in a silence so dense it pressed on her ears. Enzo spoke first, his voice dangerously quiet. Explain the recognition. Mr. Evans cleared his throat. It's a prior operational overlap, Mr. Vital, from her academy screening. A routine psych evaluation I supervised. His lie was smooth, professional, but a muscle in his jaw twitched. Amara's mind raced. The Academy's cardinal rule, handlers and assets never make direct contact post-placement. It creates blind spots, emotional leverage. Evans was breaking protocol to protect something bigger. She had two choices: back his lie and maintain the fragile mystery, or expose him and ignite a chain reaction she couldn't control. She met Enzo's gaze. Mr. Evans is correct. He administered my final clearance interview. The recognition was professional. She forced her voice to stay flat, devoid of the panic screaming in her veins. Enzo's eyes narrowed. He was a man who built empires on detecting lies. He looked from Evans to Amara, a triangulation of tension. You risked my son's immediate safety. You exposed his location. For a stranger. He didn't understand. To him, it was a reckless emotional impulse. To her, it was the core programming of the academy, triggered by a child's face, not a name. The charge is everything. She said nothing. Arguing would only dig the hole deeper. Leave us, Enzo said to Evans. It was not a request. Evans gave Amara one last, unreadable look, a warning, an apology she couldn't tell, and left. The door clicked shut. Enzo finally turned to face her fully. The rain streaked the window behind him like cracks in glass. My business with Mr. Evans is delicate. His presence here is confidential. Your connection to him is now a security liability. You will be debriefed by Kaito. You will submit all your academy logs, your personal devices. You will not see Leo until this assessment is complete. The sentence hit her like a physical blow. Not see Leo. The routine, the trust, the tiny laughs in the ballroom severed. She was being quarantined, treated as an infected limb. She nodded, the professional mask locking into place. Understood, sir. But as she turned to leave, he spoke again, his voice lower. The child you saved. His mother, she kissed your hand. She called you an angel. In my world, angels are targets. Remember that. Debriefing was an interrogation. Kaito and a stern woman from the Academy's compliance division who arrived within the hour sat across from her in a secure room. They went through every moment, every decision. Why did you override the bodyguard? Why did you not assess the street for secondary threats before exiting? They weren't asking about the rescue. They were dissecting her breakdown of protocol. The compliance officer's pen tapped a relentless rhythm. Your emotional attachment to the child is noted. Your attachment to other children appears indiscriminate, a liability. Amara sat straight-backed, her answers crisp. The academy trained me to prioritize the preservation of juvenile life as the highest categorical imperative. The subject was a juvenile in immediate mortal peril. I acted within my training parameters. She cited textbook clauses, operational doctrines. Inside, she was crumbling. They took her secured tablet, her encrypted journal. They would scour every entry, every notation about the Thursday sedans, about Uncle Marco, about the drone. Her only private thought was the one she'd never written down, the growing certainty that Leo was not just being protected, but being prepared for something. A gilded cage is still a cage. Confined to her quarters, she watched the monitor in her room, a feed of the main halls only. She saw Leo, confused, asking Gio the chef where Nanny Amara was. She saw Uncle Marco arrive, clapping Enzo on the shoulder, his smile wide and victorious. The balance of power in the house was shifting, and her mistake was the fulcrum. That night, a soft knock. It was Gio holding a tray. He'd brought her food himself, not sending a maid. He placed it down, his old eyes gentle. "The boy drew another picture for you." He slid a folded paper under the napkin. He didn't look at the camera in the corner. He just left. The drawing was of two stick figures, one tall, one small, holding hands under a huge, smiling sun. Above it, in Leo's wobbly letters, "Come back." She held the paper, the weight of it immense. This was the personal consequence. The love of a child she was sworn to protect, now used as both a lifeline and an anchor. The institutional consequence arrived at 3 a.m. Her door opened. It was Mr. Evans. He looked older under the harsh hallway light, the polished handler veneer cracked with fatigue. "We have 10 minutes, he said, his voice a whisper. "The audio in this room is currently looped. It won't last." "Why are you here?" Amara asked, her voice cold. "You've compromised me." "I'm here to extract you," he said. "The vital account is being terminated. Your cover is untenable. You'll be pulled out tomorrow, new identity, new placement." The words should have been a relief, an escape from the gilded prison, from Enzo's suspicion, from Marco's glee. But all she saw was Leo's face. "Who protects him if I leave? You know what Marco is. You know what he wants the boy to become." Evans's face hardened. "That is not the Academy's operational purview. Our mandate is your safety and the integrity of our network. You are an asset. He is a client's son. The calculus is clear." "And what is your business with Enzo?" she pressed, stepping closer. "The Thursday meetings. What are you helping him do?" Evans's eyes flickered. "That is a separate contract, corporate intelligence, stabilizing his legitimate holdings against hostile internal forces." Internal forces. Uncle Marco. The pieces clicked into a terrifying new shape. The Academy wasn't just providing nannies. It was providing intelligence and stability services to clients like Vital. Amara wasn't just protecting Leo. She was a stabilizing agent, a human keystone holding a crumbling empire together for the Academy's preferred successor, Enzo. And Marco was the hostile force. "You used me," she whispered. "My placement wasn't just about childcare. It was about influencing the succession, keeping the boy close to the father, away from the uncle, making Enzo human again." Evans didn't deny it. "Your profile was perfect, a caregiver who could rebuild the emotional core of the family unit. A strong core is less likely to fracture under pressure. It was always about the stability of the asset." He meant the Vital empire. The revelation was a vertigo drop. Every laugh, every bedtime story, every ballet lesson had been a tactical move in a corporate shadow war. Her humanity had been weaponized. "And Sophia Vital's death?" she asked, the question leaving her lips before she could stop it. Evans went very still. "That is outside your clearance." "Which means you have a file on it," she countered. "Was it the weather, Mr. Evans? Or was it a message that went unanswered?" He looked at her, and for a second she saw not a handler but a man haunted by the calculus of his own choices. The loop will end soon. Be ready at dawn. A car will come to the service gate. He turned to leave. I'm not going, Amara said. He stopped. That is not a choice. The charge is everything, she repeated. The academy's first lesson, now a weapon. You taught me that. My charge is Leo. My professional judgment is that extraction at this juncture would place him in greater danger. I am invoking Clause 7b of my contract, caregiver's prerogative in matters of immediate juvenile welfare. She was bluffing. Clause 7b was for medical emergencies, not political coups. But Evans stared at her, realizing the asset had now become a rogue variable. You will be terminated, not extracted, left to the wolves. Then I guess I'd better understand the pack, she said. After he left, the silence returned, but it was different. She was no longer a pawn. She was a player in a game she'd just learned the rules of. She had until dawn. Her tablet was gone, but the compound had a networked system. The family archives, the security logs, they were all behind a firewall. But the academy had trained her in one more thing: social engineering. The human factor is always the weakest firewall. She remembered Gio's kindness, the old chef who'd been with Enzo's father. He had access to the staff quarters, to the older, less monitored systems used for ordering supplies. At 4 a.m., she slipped from her room, not toward the high-security core, but toward the kitchens. Gio was there, already prepping dough for the morning. He didn't seem surprised to see her. You bring trouble, he said, not unkindly. I need to understand the trouble I'm in, she replied. Sophia Vital, what really happened? He kneaded the dough, his hands strong and slow. Mr. Enzo loved her. She was light. She made him laugh. After the boy was born, she wanted out of all of it. She wanted to take the child, go somewhere quiet. She had a meeting with a lawyer from the city. The car never made it to the bridge. A meeting with a lawyer to discuss separation, divorce, custody. Gio nodded. The family does not divorce. It restructures, usually quietly. Her way was not quiet. It was a declaration of war. Who knew about the meeting? Everyone, Gio said softly. She was not careful, she was brave. He looked at Amara. Like you. The pieces fused. Sophia's death wasn't just a random tragedy or a message from rivals. It was an internal execution. She was a destabilizing force, a threat to the family's unity, to its future control. And someone had removed her. The security logs, she said, from that week. Is there a way to see who accessed the garage, who might have tampered with the car? Gio wiped his hands on his apron. He walked to a dusty terminal in the pantry used for inventory. The security system is new, from after. But the old system, the one from the late Don's time, it ran on a separate server. For sentimental reasons, Mr. Enzo never had it destroyed. It is disconnected, but the data is there. He led her to a small, closet-like office behind the cold storage. A vintage computer hummed. Gio typed in a password, the birthday of Enzo's father. The system booted up, a green-on-black display. He navigated to archived logs, the date of the accident. There were dozens of entries, garage access, maintenance checks. One line stood out. At 11 p.m. the night before the accident, a user with the code MV had overridden the scheduled vehicle safety inspection for Sophia's car. The override reason: family request urgent. MV Marco Vital. Amara felt the room tilt. It wasn't just a power grab now. It was a blood debt. Marco had killed Sophia, and now he was positioning himself to mold Leo, to control the air, and eventually to seize everything from Enzo. She needed proof. This archaic log was a ghost, not admissible, easily denied. She needed something from the present, something that connected Marco's past action to his current plot. Think, she commanded herself. The drone, the toy guns, the doctor. Marco was applying pressure, testing Enzo's resolve, looking for weaknesses, and her removal was a key weakness. Evans and the Academy were trying to stabilize Enzo's rule. Marco was trying to destabilize it, and Leo was the prize. Dawn was an hour away. The extraction car would come. She could leave, save herself, let the Academy bury her in a new life. Or she could stay and walk into a war where she now knew one side was led by a murderer. She looked at Gio. I need to get a message to Enzo, without Kaido, without the security room seeing it. Gio sighed, a sound of weary resignation. There is one way, the old way. He opened a drawer, pulled out a simple, unmarked mobile phone, a burner. It connects to a private line in his study, a line from his father's time. He answers it himself, always. Amara took the phone. Her fingers trembled. She typed a single, stark message, knowing it could be her death sentence or the only thing that could save Leo. MV overrode the safety inspection on Sophia's car the night before she died. The proof is in the old server. He is doing it again. The boy is next. She sent it, the clock ticked, 5 minutes 10. The burner phone rang, shrill in the silent pantry. She answered. Enzo's voice, stripped of all pretense, raw and quiet, came through. Where are you? The kitchen pantry. Stay there. The line went dead. The bridge was crossed. The war was now hers. And as headlights approached the service gate in the pre-dawn gray, she knew the extraction car was here. But she wasn't leaving. She was waiting for the king to come to the pawn and for the game to change forever. He didn't come with guards. Enzo Vital entered the pantry alone, still in the suit from the night before, his tie loose. The controlled mask was gone. In its place was a terrifying, raw clarity. He looked at Gio, then at the old terminal. Show me. Gio brought up the log entry again. The green text glowed in the dim light. User MV override authorized. Safety inspection CANCELLED. Enzo's hand went to the edge of the terminal, his knuckles white. For 3 years he'd believed it was an accident. For 3 years he'd blamed himself for not forcing Sophia to take a different car, for not being there. The grief had been a cage. This was a key made of fire. He turned to Amara. Why? She met his gaze, no longer the employee but the witness, because he's doing it again. The drone was a test. My removal was the goal. With me gone, Leo's world shrinks back to these walls, to the people in them, to Marco's influence. You're the target, but Leo is the mechanism. He becomes the air Marco can shape, or the air he can remove if he becomes too much like you. Enzo's eyes were dark pools, absorbing the logic of betrayal. And the Academy, Evans. Stability, Amara said. They bet on you as the stable successor. They place me to reinforce that. Marco's rise is bad for their business model. They want predictable corporate power, not a street war. So you are a spy. I'm a nanny, she said, her voice steady. The spying was a side effect of caring for your son. I noted the anomalies to protect him. The connection to your business, to Evans, I pieced that together tonight. A faint, grim approximation of a smile touched his lips. You pieced it together, and you stayed. Why? The charge is everything. You asked me not to stop making him laugh. If I leave, who does that? The question hung in the cold air. The extraction car would be at the gate now, waiting for a ghost. Enzo pulled out his own phone, typed a brief message. He looked at Gio. Take her to the East safe room. No one sees her, not Kaido, not anyone. You feed her. You tell no one. Gio nodded, the soldier in him recognizing a direct order. Enzo looked back at Amara. You have just made yourself the most dangerous person in this house, to him and to me. Do not move from that room until I come myself. He left, the silence rushing back in. Gio led her through a hidden panel in the pantry wall, down narrow, dusty stairs used by servants a century ago. The East safe room was a small, windowless space with a cot, water, and an ancient landline. He brought her blankets, food. The boy asked for you at breakfast, he said softly. I told him you were sick. He made you a card. He left her in the tomb-like quiet. She was off the board, but the game was accelerating without her. She could only wait. The first tremor came 6 hours later. Through the walls, she heard the distant, muffled sound of raised voices. Two men, Enzo and Marco. It was too far to hear words, only the cadence of a building storm. Then a sudden silence, heavy, ominous. 20 minutes after that, her landline rang, a jarring bell. It was Enzo. "Can you handle a firearm?" The question was so blunt it took her a second. "Yes. Academy basic proficiency." "Good, the situation has evolved. Marco has left the compound. He took a small security contingent loyal to him. He knows I know." "What does that mean?" "It means the shadow war just ended. The real one begins. He will move to seize physical assets, docks, warehouses. He will also move to seize leverage." "Leo." "Yes, you are now his secondary target. You witnessed the log. You are evidence. He will try to take you to silence you or take Leo to control me. I am reorganizing security. Kaido's loyalty is under assessment." The floor seemed to drop away. The head of security possibly compromised. The walls were not just cracking, they were switching sides. "I'm sending someone to you. He is the only person in this house besides Gio I am currently certain of. Do what he says." The line went dead. Amara sat in the dark, her mind racing through scenarios, defensive positions, extraction routes for a child. The academy training switched to a cold, operational hum. The door opened an hour later. The man who entered was not a guard. He was the family's head driver, a quiet man in his 50s named Joseph. She'd seen him 100 times, holding car doors, never speaking. He carried a small duffel bag. He placed it on the cot, opened it. Inside was a compact handgun, 2 extra magazines, a medical kit, and a child-sized bulletproof vest. "Mr. Vital believes the primary threat will be an incursion to extract the young sir from the nursery. The security in that wing is comprised of men whose loyalties are now unknown. We are to relocate him to a secondary safe room, unknown to the main security grid." "How do we get there?" Amara asked, checking the weapon with automatic motions, ensuring the safety was on. "There is a passage," Joseph said. "From the time of the grandfather. It is not on any blueprint. It runs behind the nursery wall. We must move now. Marco's men are watching the cameras. He will see you are not in your quarters. He will deduce you are with the boy." They moved like ghosts. Joseph led her back through the servant stairs, up to a concealed door behind a linen closet on the second floor. The passage was narrow, musty, lined with old electrical conduits. It ended at a section of wall that slid aside, revealing the back of Leo's wardrobe. They could hear him in the room, playing with wooden blocks, a guard's muffled voice speaking to someone on a radio just outside the door. Amara slid the panel open slowly. Leo looked up. For a second he just stared. Then his face lit up. "Nanny, Amara, you're not sick." She put a finger to her lips, her heart breaking at the whisper. "SHHH, little lion. We're going on a secret adventure. We have to be very, very quiet." He nodded, his eyes wide with excitement, not fear. She helped him put on a warm sweater, then the small, heavy vest over it. He frowned at the weight. "What's this?" "A superhero costume," she whispered, "for the secret mission." That worked. Joseph kept watch at the panel as Amara lifted Leo, feeling the profound, terrifying weight of him in her arms. They retreated into the passage, sliding the wall closed just as the nursery door opened, and a new voice, Uncle Marco's, boomed into the room. "Where is he?" The guard sounded confused. "He was right here, sir, 1 minute ago." The search would begin now. They were in a race through the arteries of the house. The secondary safe room was behind the old library, accessed through a false bookshelf. It was larger, stocked with supplies, and had a single monitor showing a feed from a hidden camera in the main hall. Joseph sealed the door. "We wait for Mr. Vital." On the monitor, they watched chaos unfold. Marco, his face flushed with fury, was directing men in the foyer. Kaido stood beside him, his face impassive. The confirmation was a cold knife. The head of security had chosen his side. Then a new development. The front gate camera showed a black sedan arriving, not Marco's. Mr. Evans got out, accompanied by two academy operatives in tactical gear. They were let in by Marco's men. A meeting was happening in the open. Amara stared, the final piece of the betrayal slotting into place. The academy hadn't just bet on stability. They were hedging. With Enzo compromised by the revelation and potentially emotionally unstable, they were pivoting to back the next strongest power, Marco. Evans wasn't there to salvage the vital account. He was there to transfer it. The monitor's audio crackled to life, patched into the main house system. They could hear the conversation in the study. Marco's voice was all false cheer. "Evans, good. We can formalize the new arrangement." Evans's tone was all business. "The parameters have changed. Our asset is missing, possibly with the child. This is an uncontrolled variable." "Your brother has her," Marco scoffed. "He's hiding them somewhere in this mausoleum. We'll find them. The important thing is the transition. You get your percentage of the legitimate holdings smoothed over. We handle the messier sides." "And the boy?" Evans asked. "He's the heir. He'll be raised properly, with the right influences." There was a pause. Evans's voice lowered. "Our initial contract included a non-violence clause toward the principal heir. The Academy's reputation cannot be attached to a succession that involves a child's harm." "You think I'd hurt my own nephew?" Marco's laugh was ugly. "He'll be fine. He'll just learn that his father was too weak to hold this family together, that his nanny was a liar who abandoned him." Amara felt Leo stir against her. He was listening, his small body tense. She held him closer, her hand over his ear, but it was too late. He was hearing the unraveling of his world. Then Enzo's voice, calm and clear, came from the doorway of the study. The audio picked it up perfectly. He had entered unseen. "You always were a poor liar, Marco." The room on the monitor erupted into motion. Guards reached for weapons. Evans held up a hand, his face tense. Enzo ignored them all, walking to the desk. He looked at Evans. "You're fired. Tell your principals the vital account is closed. Any further interference will be treated as corporate espionage and met with proportional force." Evans paled. "Mr. Vital, be reasonable. We can still facilitate a peaceful transition." "There will be no transition," Enzo said. "Only a correction." He looked at his brother. "You canceled a safety inspection. You killed my wife. You will now answer for it." Marco's smile vanished. "You have no proof." "I have a witness, I have a log, and I have you in my house with armed men attempting a coup. That is all the proof the rest of our associates will need." He turned to Kaido. "You have a choice, him or me." Kaido, the man of pure operational logic, made his calculation. He saw Marco's rage, Enzo's cold certainty, the Academy's mercenary retreat. He took one step back, placing himself against the wall, neutral. The room was split. Marco snarled, pulling a gun from his jacket. It was over. The silent war was now a single, violent room. But before he could level it, a new sound echoed through the house's speakers, a sound no one could have anticipated. The fire alarm. A piercing, relentless shriek, followed by the whoosh of automatic sprinklers activating in the West Wing. On the monitor, they saw confusion. Men looked around. Smoke began to seep under the study door, theatrical smoke from a canister. Joseph, beside Amara, allowed himself a small smile. "The diversion," he said, "Mr. Vital's instruction." In the chaos on screen, Enzo moved. Not toward Marco, but toward the door, melting into the smoky hall. He was coming for them. The safe room phone rang. It was Enzo, his voice tight. "The alarm will draw them to the West Wing. I have 60 seconds. Be ready to move. We are leaving the compound." "Where?" Amara asked. "Somewhere they will not think to look," he said. "Somewhere with no walls." The line went dead. Amara looked at Joseph, then at Leo, whose face was buried in her shoulder. The compound was no longer a fortress. It was a trap, and the only way out was through the heart of the fire. The door to the safe room opened on Enzo's vital signal. He stood there, a silhouette against the chaotic hallway glow, a compact submachine gun held low at his side. His eyes found Amara, then Leo in her arms. Time is short. This way. They moved in a tight unit, Enzo leading, Joseph covering the rear, Amara in the middle with Leo clinging to her neck. The fire alarm was a blessing and a curse. It masked their movement but filled the corridors with a strobing, hellish light and panic. They encountered two of Marco's men at the junction to the service stairs. Enzo didn't hesitate. Two precise, suppressed shots. The men dropped. He didn't look back. They descended into the underbelly of the compound, the utility levels where the old plumbing and electrical systems ran. This was Enzo's territory, planned long ago. He stopped at a heavy steel door marked boiler, no access. He keyed in a code. The door hissed open, revealing not a boiler room but a garage. A single, nondescript gray van sat there, its engine already idling. In he commanded. Joseph took the driver's seat. Enzo helped Amara and Leo into the back, which was lined with soundproofing and secured with harnesses. As Enzo slid the side door shut, a voice echoed down the stairwell. It was Marco, screaming their names, the sound raw with fury. The van shot forward, down a narrow ramp that emerged through a camouflaged exit onto a wooded service road behind the estate. They were out, for now. They drove in silence for an hour, putting distance between them and the war zone. Leo, exhausted from fear and adrenaline, fell asleep in Amara's lap. Enzo stared out the tinted window, his face a mask in the passing streetlights. He finally spoke, his voice rough. The safe house is a flat in the old city, owned by a shell corporation no one has looked at in 20 years. We have 48 hours before Marco consolidates enough power to start a real search. What's the plan? Amara asked, her hand automatically stroking Leo's hair. The plan, Enzo said, turning to look at her, is to do what I should have done 3 years ago. Burn it all down. The flat was small, dusty, but secure. It overlooked a quiet courtyard. Joseph secured the perimeter. Enzo set up a makeshift command center with encrypted laptops and burner phones. The first calls were not to allies but to enemies, or rather to Marco's rivals within their own world. Enzo played the recording from the study, the audio of Marco admitting his coup, of Evans's mercenary pivot. He attached the scanned image of the old server log. He didn't ask for help. He presented evidence. In their world, legitimacy was a currency, and Marco had just been bankrupted. The second call was to the city's financial regulators, anonymously tipping them to irregularities in the vital holdings, recent transfers, all spearheaded by Marco. It was a white-collar missile aimed at his brother's newfound legitimacy. While Enzo waged his silent war, Amara's war was simpler. She made Leo pasta on the tiny stove. She found a children's book on a shelf and read to him. She created a bubble of normalcy in the eye of the hurricane. Enzo would watch them sometimes, the relentless focus in his eyes softening for a fleeting second. The counterattack began at dawn. Marco, overconfident and sloppy, moved to physically take over the main downtown warehouse. He was met not by Enzo's loyalists, but by a coalition of neutral family associates who had heard the recording. They blocked him. A public, bloody street battle was averted, replaced by a cold, corporate freeze-out. Marco's support began to crumble like wet sand. Then the final piece. Enzo summoned Mr. Evans, not to the flat but to a public cafe in broad daylight. Amara watched from a van across the street, an earpiece feeding her the audio. Joseph was with her, a rifle discreetly broken down in a case. Evans arrived, alone, looking like a man going to his own execution. He sat across from Enzo. "You've made a mess, Mr. Vital. You made the mess when you decided my brother was a better investment," Enzo replied, sipping his espresso. "The Academy's reputation is clean, surgical. How does it look when it's revealed you were cozying up to a man who murdered his sister-in-law for a percentage point? You have no proof we knew that. But you know it now, and you continue to deal with him. That's complicity. Here are my terms. You will issue a formal internal revocation of all support for Marco Vito. You will provide me with the full dossier your firm has compiled on him over the years, every financial sin, every weak link. And you will permanently close the file on Amara Oak. She is erased from your systems. She never existed. And in return, Evans asked, his voice tight, in return, I don't release the recording of you facilitating a coup to every corporate intelligence rival you have. And I don't sue your academy for breach of contract and emotional damages on behalf of my son. Your choice. Evans was silent for a long minute. He had no leverage. The asset had become a liability and the client had become a predator. Done, he said. One more thing, Enzo said, his voice dropping. The woman in the street, the toddler she saved. You will ensure the mother receives an anonymous trust fund for the child's education. 100,000 from your operating budget. Consider it a lesson in actual morality. Evans nodded, defeated. The meeting ended. Back at the flat, Enzo played the recording of Evans's agreement for Amara. You're free, he said. The academy won't look for you. You can go anywhere. There's an account for you, enough to start over. Amara looked from the laptop to Leo, who was building a tower of blocks on the floor. She had what she'd wanted, freedom, safety, a clean slate. But the equation had changed. The charge was still everything. Where would you go? She asked Enzo. He leaned back, the weight of the last days showing in the lines around his eyes. The compound is compromised. My business, it needs to become something else. Something that doesn't require walls 10 feet high. It starts with removing my brother from the board. And then, he looked at his son, and then I build something he can actually inherit. Not an empire of fear, a business, maybe even a legacy. It sounded like a dream, fragile and new. Amara made a decision. She didn't pick up the burner phone with the account details. She walked to the small kitchen and filled a pot with water. I'm making jollof rice, she said. It's Tuesday, and you need to learn that polite food is bad food. A flicker of surprise, then the ghost of a smile touched Enzo's lips. Is that a lesson? It's a requirement, she said, for anyone who wants to be in this room. The resolution of Marco's story was not cinematic. There was no final shootout. Cornered by the collapsing financial moves and abandoned by his allies, he tried to flee the country. He was arrested by federal authorities at the private airfield, not for murder, but for tax evasion, fraud, and conspiracy. The mundane charges were Enzo's final irony. Marco would spend his life in a white-collar prison, powerless, his name a joke. The deeper truth of Sophia's death remained a silent understanding, a ghost that would haunt him in his cell. Sometimes, the quietest vengeance is the most complete. With Marco gone, the reclamation was swift. Enzo returned to a compound purged of betrayal. He didn't throw a victory party. He had the East Wing, Sophia's old studio, the room where Leo took his first steps, converted into a bright, open schoolroom. The walls, literally and figuratively, began to come down. A week later, Enzo found Amara in the new garden, watching Leo chase a butterfly. He handed her a single sheet of paper. It was a contract, but not from the academy. It was from him. Position, Director of Child Security and Development. Responsibilities, ensuring the safety, education, and well-being of Leo Vito. Authority, ultimate in all matters pertaining to the child. Salary, substantial. Visa sponsorship, permanent. Reporting to Leo Vito and optionally his father. She read it twice. Director, she asked. You rebuilt the core of this family, he said. You don't belong at the periphery. You belong at the center, on your terms. She looked at him, this man who had learned to trust not a system but a person. What about the optionally? He shrugged, a gesture almost unfamiliar in its looseness. I'm told I need to learn to be a better conversationalist. Someone suggested Tuesday dinners might be a start. Amara smiled. She took the pen he offered and signed. Not as a nanny, not as an asset, but as Amara Oak. The girl from Lagos with strong hands who finally knew what and who she was holding up. The final surprise came on a Tuesday, 3 months later. The jollof rice was simmering. Leo was in the schoolroom with a new, vetted tutor. A package arrived, delivered by a neutral courier. It was for Amara. Inside was a simple silver key and a coordinates. No note. Enzo's security team traced it. The coordinates led to a small, sunny apartment in Lagos, in a good neighborhood. The title was in the name of Amara's late grandmother, purchased 6 months ago, paid in full by a blind trust. Only one person had the knowledge and the means to set that up before everything fell apart. Mr. Evans. A parting gift or a guilty conscience. A piece of her old life, given back, waiting for her if she ever wanted it. A reminder that even in the darkest games, a thread of humanity sometimes, inexplicably, remains. She put the key on her chain next to the one for the compound. A reminder of where she came from and what she'd chosen. That evening over dinner, Leo told a rambling story about his day. Enzo actually listened and asked a question. Amara passed the rice. The house was quiet, but the silence was no longer heavy. It was peaceful. The war was over. The work of building something new, something real, had just begun. And as the first, genuine laugh in years echoed softly in the warm kitchen, it was clear that the strongest walls are not made of steel, but of the moments you choose to protect. We tell stories about kings and commanders, about the people who give the orders, but history is just as often shaped by the people who hold the line. The nanny, the maid, the caregiver, they operate in the intimate shadows of power, where the real battles for a person's soul are fought. Amara Oak's story is a fiction, but the dynamic is ancient. In the gilded cages of royalty, the compound walls of oligarchs, the penthouses of dynasties, it is often the hired hand who teaches the heir how to be human. The elite nanny academy is a narrative device, but the concept it represents is chillingly real. The professionalization of love, the weaponization of attachment. We outsource the most sacred task, the raising of a child, to institutions that see loyalty as a contract and care as a strategic asset. What does it do to a society when the deepest bonds become part of a balance sheet? Amara chose to break that contract. She chose the child over the system, a human over a principle. In doing so, she didn't just save Leo Vito from a bullet or a kidnapping. She saved him from a fate far more common and insidious, becoming a monument to his family's pathology, another brick in a wall of fear. She gave him laughter, and in that laughter, she gave his father a reason to dismantle the fortress. The lingering question isn't whether such stories happen. They do. The question is whether we see them. We notice the motorcade, the suit, the power. Do we notice the woman in the gray uniform who steps in front of it? Do we recognize that the most powerful person in a room is sometimes not the one with the most money, but the one holding the hand of the person who will inherit it all? The world is built on unseen geometries of protection. The bodyguard takes a bullet. The nanny shapes a heart. Both acts are heroic. Both require a strength that has nothing to do with muscle and everything to do with a decision. This person, this life, is worth more than my own comfort, my own safety, my own future. So the next time you see a fortress, don't just look at the walls. Look for the person inside who remembers what the sky looks like above them and who is brave enough to point it out to the child in their care. Because sometimes the most dangerous thing in a guarded fortress isn't a weapon. It's a storybook. It's a pot of jollof rice on a Tuesday. It's the simple, subversive act of treating someone like a human being, not an asset. That's the real takeover, not of territory, but of a future. If you found yourself rooting for the nanny in the gray uniform, you're not alone. These are the stories we're here to tell. The hidden figures, the quiet rebellions, the moments where a single choice changes the geometry of power. For more deep dives into the unseen forces that shape our world, hit subscribe. Stay curious.